think we should
A very warm welcome to the audience that we have here today.
लोग आएंगे. Hi.
It is my pleasure in my capacity as the convener of the interdisciplinary program in educational technology
इनको बोलो इधर talk.
to inaugurate and introduce this series of talks, workshops, discussions and exchanges that we make today. The purpose of this series is to present to the IITB community and also to anybody interested beyond this community some of the work that we are doing in this interdisciplinary program, which we believe has a lot of potential to be applied in many educational institutions, including our own at IIT Bombay. We feel that it's very important that the impact of the research being done in this interdisciplinary program be understood by an audience which deals directly or indirectly with pedagogy. So any faculty member at IIT Bombay directly has a pedagogical experience, if you might call it that, and therefore it is also said that every faculty member has an opinion about pedagogy, whether deeply studied or not. It helps, therefore, to be aware of the consequences of the research being done systematically in this interdisciplinary program, to link what one knows informally, perhaps in one's experience of teaching, with certain formal studies that have been done and formal methods that have been evolved, both from the point of view of improving one's pedagogical experience and also evaluating one's pedagogical success. So, without meaning to intrude too much into what the speakers are going to do, I intended to make this little introduction to this series so that everybody is aware, even in future, what this series aims at doing, and everybody is encouraged to come and participate, either as an audience or sometimes also as speakers or more active participants in some manner or the other. So with this, we welcome today the first speaker in the series, Professor Sridhar Iyer. He happens to be one of the very active faculty involved in the interdisciplinary program in educational technology. It is indeed, we must all first give him a big hand for having agreed to give the very first talk, and then now invite him very cordially to present his work.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Gadre. So this talk is about a strategy called Think, Pair, Share, and how we implemented it in a course on CS 101. And at the end there is a tutorial where you can implement it in your course. So those of you who are faculty can directly use that, and those of you who are students can plan for a course which they are going to teach or take it in some other context. So to begin with, we want to ask this question, what is active learning? You know, this is a term which is much bandied about. So one definition of active learning is that it's an approach to teaching and learning whose goal is to engage students with the content via specific activities that the students have to do, okay, such as talking, writing, reflecting and expressing their thinking. So there are several instructional strategies that come under active learning. Okay, some of them are formal, some of them are informal. If you look at the research in the literature, these are some 4 requirements for a strategy to be termed as an active learning strategy. Okay. So we may do a lot of informal things in our class like asking questions to students and so on, but in order for a strategy to be termed as an active learning strategy, first of all you need the instructor to design activities that require students to do these talking, writing, reflecting of their thinking. Students are going beyond listening and copying of notes. The strategies are explicitly based on theories of learning, and lastly they are evaluated repeatedly through empirical research. So there is research based evidence on how the strategy works, why it works and so on. So let's look at some evidence for a need for active learning. Okay. So here is a study where there are 2 video lectures. We are talking about 2 video lectures. In one case it's the same content, and in one case the instructor speaks fluently, okay, doesn't use notes, looks at the camera, has eye contact, all of that. Okay. In the other case the instructor is speaking very haltingly, referring to notes and having very poor body language and so on. Okay. So what the study does is, it tries to say, okay, how much learning happens in the class. So we expect, what do we expect? We expect that the instructor who was very energetic and delivered the lecture very well, the learning in that class is going to be more than the learning in the other class. So that's basically what we say, that predict that fluent is greater than the disfluent lecturer. But surprisingly, one finds that the actual achievement between the two cases is, there is no significant difference between the two of them. So even though there is a huge gap in the prediction, so basically what it means is that this is our expectation that they would learn so much, and what we find is they learn pretty much as any other lecture. So the message here is that improving the fluency of lectures does not necessarily imply better learning. So we need to figure out what else should we do. I mean, why is it happening that simply improving the fluency does not lead to better learning? So we look at another study on active learning strategies. Okay, so this study is reported by Hake, and 6,500 students across 62 courses across several institutions were were tested. And the study shows that you have two sets of instructors, one who is doing traditional lectures. So there are 14 instructors who are doing traditional lectures. Traditional lectures means largely based on delivering the information, although all these instructors were also highly reputed and had high teaching evaluation. So they were good instructors. It's not that they were bad instructors in any way. And then there were another 48 who were using some form of active learning strategies in their classes. And what we find is that the maximum gain from the lecture courses was 0.28. Okay? So however good your lecture was, you would get only up to 0.28 in gain in terms of student learning. Okay? And typically people fell somewhere between 0.2 and 0.24. So that's, even though many instructors had high scores on teaching evaluations, the students were unable to demonstrate what the instructors were trying their best to convey. Okay? And then on the other hand, when you look at the active learning courses, okay, so you find that there is a huge spread all the way from 0.2 to 0.72. Basically means that it depends upon how well the active learning is actually executed, and we find that a reasonably well done active learning course often has gains of 2 to 3 times greater than that of lecturing. So the implication here is that it's desirable to explicitly incorporate active learning strategies in our teaching learning process. So what exactly are these features of active learning that we are seeking? So the primary one is that students should engage in some problem solving activity during class time. Okay? So sometimes we have this concept of a tutorial class. So we have 3 lectures and the 4th class which is a tutorial class. So the point here is that separating the tutorial from the lecture is not that good an idea. So what you want to do is a tutorial within the lecture. So that's basically the point. Okay, where students are doing problem solving activities, specific ideas are elicited and addressed, okay, and there are some open-ended questions where students are asked to figure things out for themselves, so that they can come to know how much they are learning or how much they have learned. Okay. Students are asked to express their reasoning explicitly so that they can be confronted with misconceptions, and they work collaboratively. So some other features are that students receive rapid feedback on their work, either from their peers or from the instructor. The instructor also receives rapid feedback because you can see how much are the students actually learning in your class, and qualitative reasoning and conceptual thinking are emphasized. Okay, so there are a whole bunch of active learning strategies. Today we will talk about think, pair, share, one of them. In a later talk in this series we will talk about peer instruction. Maybe sometime later we will talk about team, pair, solo. So we will kind of go down these list of strategies and talk about each of them. So today's focus is think, pair, share. Okay, so this is a strategy. Okay, so how does the strategy work? So let's execute it and see. So consider a large class, for example CS 101 which is having 450 students, and imagine a 90-minute class in a large auditorium which is our LCH or whatever. Okay. So what you need to do, you as in all those sitting here, need to predict the percentage of students who may be showing engaged behavior. Engaged means either working out something or listening attentively or taking notes, okay, at various instants of time, and draw a graph of engagement versus time. Yeah, so activity. Those who need paper, I can produce some paper, and it's desirable to sit in groups of 2. Okay, so it's not yet time to discuss. All right, this is time for working out individually. You have to predict. So you can think of your favorite prof, you can think of your least favorite prof, it doesn't matter who you think of. Think about somebody and try to predict, okay, what will be this graph of engagement versus time. So you have time on the x-axis, the percentage of students engaged on the y-axis. Okay. So let's say in the beginning 100% of the students are engaged, and then how does that graph move as the lecture progresses. That's the graph that we are trying to plot here individually. Any class, you choose any class, any large class.
Is there a traditional class?
It's up to you. You can choose a traditional class, you can qualify saying that, okay, I have chosen a traditional class or I have chosen an interactive class, whichever. Just try to predict. Your own class, simplest.
Based on my experience.
Yeah, I mean usually one's own class is not that good an idea because we typically overestimate the number of students who are engaged in our classes. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so let's do this for 1 minute and don't yet talk. Just, I'll give you time to talk about it. So does everybody have a graph, some sort of graph? Right or wrong, doesn't matter. So time is on the x-axis, percentage of students engaged is on the y-axis. Okay, most people seem to have drawn something. So let's move on to the next step, which is the pair phase. So you are sitting as 2 in a bench. So look at each other's graphs, okay, and you can talk about why you drew this graph. The other person can say why he or she drew the other graph, okay, and then, so that is the first step which you do in a minute. Start.
Also consider other factors that influence the
Sure.
attentiveness.
Yeah, you can say.
Write down different factors.
Yeah.
Make a difference.
So those are your assumptions. You say that this instructor is doing all this. Under those assumptions, this is how the graph looks. Okay. Okay. So the goal now is to come up with 2 techniques. Okay. So whatever be the graph that you drew, many of you have graphs which dip. Okay, dip and then come back up and so on. So most people seem to have graphs which dip. They start high and they dip. So what we want to do is avoid the dip. Okay. So come up with 2 techniques in your own of your own that could be used to convert the graph that looks something like this, which is like it starts high and somewhat stays high. Okay. What would you do in your class? So some of the points that you mentioned, those are the activities that the instructor could do to keep the engagement levels high, right? चोर है. Okay, most people seem to have got 1 or 2 ideas written down. Most groups have got there. So let's move on to the third phase, which is what is called the share phase. So our goal here is to create a combined list of techniques and discuss the pros and cons of each technique. Okay. So let me do one thing. I'll start a blank slate and I'll write down suggestions that you give me. Okay. So what could be done? 2 techniques. We can start there. Quiz. Okay. What do you mean by quiz? Give a quiz.
Give a quiz.
Huh.
Conduct a quiz towards the end of the quiz.
Towards the end. Okay. Then something else?
Some videos or some interesting fact which is not related to theory but
Show.
in general. Yeah.
Show some videos. Show some videos or interesting fact not related to the theory. But solve a problem. Solve means demonstrate solution of a problem or have students solve a problem?
Posing a problem.
Okay.
Posing.
Okay, pose a problem is different from solve a problem, so I am going to write it separately. Pose a problem, students to solve. Okay, solve a problem is instructor discusses. Okay, what else?
Give a quiz towards the beginning.
Okay.
At the beginning.
Okay. Change the topic. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Narration of an interesting application or case study.
Okay, narration. Okay. Yeah.
Have a group discussion.
Have a group discussion on what?
Yeah, so basically after you talk about a particular concept,
Ah,
maybe you pose a little question related to that.
okay.
Put people into group and ask like what you are doing now.
Okay. All right. Huh? Yeah.
Make students only to engage in slightly extrapolated part of the discussion.
Okay, what does that mean? Slightly extrapolated means? Okay. Make students anticipate what you intend to tell them later. Okay. Create a conflict of opinions. Okay. It's a good one. Okay. Okay. Are we done?
Have a puzzle.
Have a puzzle. Okay. Okay. So if anybody has thought of different technique, now is the time to speak up. Different from.
Create a kind of a suspense in the sense that pose a quiz after a short part of the lecture for which the answers will be available in the end.
Okay.
So
Create some suspense.
suspense,
Okay.
so that they keep themselves engaged with what to expect at the end.
Suspense. Okay. Quiz with answers to the end. Okay. Okay. So let's just quickly look at the pros and cons of these techniques, and are they likely to get you what we are saying as sustained engagement. So that's our goal, right? We want to sustain engagement. So that is the test that we want to apply to these techniques. That is it likely to lead to sustained engagement? Momentary engagement? Yes. So the test we are applying now is, can we get sustained engagement by these techniques? So quiz towards the end. What do you think? What do others think? Other than those who came up with this technique?
Probably not.
Okay. So this is
Momentary, yes.
momentary, yes. Sustained, probably not. Okay. How about showing videos? Sustaining?
I think if there is a discussion with the video, then
Huh?
if it is a video that is just
Okay, yeah. So if it's an informational info video, then it might put people to sleep, right? So if it is a discussion following video, then it might lead to engagement. Solve a problem, instructor discusses. Sounds like a good strategy. I am solving a problem, students are engaged. What's the problem with it?
the students are also allowed to bring their opinion while
Okay, so even if students are allowed to give their opinion, let's say students are allowed to give their opinion, I am still going to say that this will not lead to sustained engagement.
maybe the student should come to the board and solve.
Maybe, yeah, that for that student it will be engaging. So the point of instructor discusses is often, so this is the strategy, many of these strategies come under what is called interactive lecturing. So what happens is, in the instructor discusses case, some students are going to be engaged all the time, some students are not going to pay much attention to what discussion is happening. Okay, so let's look at the next one. Students to solve. Pose the problem, students to solve. What about this one? Will it lead to sustained engagement?
Depending on how comprehensive the problem is.
Depending on the problem
comprehensive.
Okay, problem and what else? It depends upon two more factors. Huh? A comprehensive level of difficulty I am going to put as features of the problem.
I just wanted a clarification.
Yeah.
See, in the beginning you talked about the dichotomy of expectation and then the result.
Yeah.
So here what are we?
We are looking at result. What we expect will be the result. So we are trying to predict that, okay, is this going to lead to sustained engagement or not?
And learning.
And learning, yeah. So right now we can settle for engagement.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry? Huh. So it depends upon the problem, distribution on, okay, distribution, okay, student capabilities. Okay, so what else would you do? I mean, think of this as a tutorial that you are doing in your class. What else would you do? Would you just post the problem?
Walk around.
You would need to walk around, otherwise it's not going to work, right? So it depends upon instructor walking around. Okay, give a quiz at the beginning.
How would you walk around in a 415?
You got to be creative. So I actually do that. I go up and come down. So yeah, you got, no, maybe TAs, maybe not. I mean, even it's not that bad. You know, a couple of times you do it in a class, it works out. Okay, let's not get distracted. Yeah. So quiz at the beginning. Okay, so giving a quiz at the beginning also is going to be momentary, right? I mean, I guess most people will agree. Okay, narration of an interesting application or a case study. So all of these strategies which are listed later, you know, one thing that you can observe is they will be sustaining engagement for the duration of that particular diversion, so to speak, right? So the moment the diversion is gone, it's again going to start following the original pattern of engagement. Okay. So let me move on in the interest of time and come to what is think, pair, share. Okay. So think, pair, share is one activity which somewhat does not suffer from this momentariness of the engagement. So what it was, we already saw an illustration. So I'll give you the formal definition in the next slide. Okay. Why do we want to use this? So there are well-known challenges. So it's more easy for students to tune out, especially in a large class, get distracted into using their mobiles or do their assignment and so on and so forth. So we need some active learning techniques, and it's a relatively easy way to achieve the benefits of small group cooperative learning. Okay. So this is what we just did. Okay. So it's a collaborative active learning strategy. Collaborative being all of us contributed to the answer, learned from each other. That's the collaborative part. Active, all of you thought about what graph to draw, argued why your graph works, and so on. Okay. In which students work on a problem posed by the instructor. First individually, that's where the think phase where each of you have to draw, and then in pairs, and then finally together with the entire class. Okay. So this is the actual definition. Teacher asks a specific question, students have to come up with their own individual answers. In the pair phase, the teacher asks another question which is related to the previous one, and then they pair, think about it, and in the share phase finally they share their thinking with the entire class. So this is, we've already seen a demo of this, so I'm not going to read out the definition. Okay. So why does it work? So it works for a variety of reasons. One is that they are actively engaged, they learn from each other, they can tackle large and ill-structured problems, okay, and they develop the ability to consider multiple points of views. Like for example, somebody asked that, okay, suppose the instructor were doing this in the class, okay, then the graph would look like that. If the instructor were not doing this, then the graph would look something else. So where we have multiple points of views that come up, okay. Other benefits of TPS are that it makes the class interactive. Okay, this is an important one. Students realize that even others are struggling. So often instructors, we run the class based on the response that we get. Okay, and usually it's the ones who are able to keep up, those are the ones who are responding. Okay. And other students feel that, okay, that guy knows but I don't know. So when we do this kind of active learning techniques, other students also realize that I'm not the only one who's not getting it. There are others who are not getting it, okay, which goes for building a good atmosphere in the classroom. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip this second activity. I actually had one more activity, and okay, let me just pose the question. Okay, So this idea here is that consider somebody who says my lectures are interactive. Okay, so now we are talking about interactive lectures. From traditional lectures, we are now talking about interactive lectures. Okay, so many of us say this. My lectures are interactive. I show visualizations. I show demos in my class. I ask questions to students. I encourage them to answer, and my class proceeds based on these questions and answers. Okay, so it's a good way of interacting in the class. It's a good way of teaching. Okay, but nevertheless, what we want to ask is, what could be the lacuna in this technique which we want to now fill up? So what could be some reasons? So instead of doing, I had a TPS for this also, but instead of doing that, let's just list down some reasons. Yeah, does anybody want to take a shot? Why this may not be an effective strategy?
Don't know at the end of it whether
Whether the it will engage some students, not all in the end.
there may not be any peer-to-peer interaction.
There may not be any peer-to-peer interaction. Important point. Why is that important? I'll come to that.
Some people find a demo a distraction.
Okay. Okay. That's a valid point.
One point is that unless you can explain something to somebody else, you have not understood it yourself. So the way we learn is that we teach, right?
Yeah.
So this is like doing it on a micro basis.
Yeah. Okay, so anything else? Anybody else wants to comment? Okay, so let me go directly to the share phase of this activity and see what points I had put down originally. Okay, so the idea was to come up with a combined list of reasons and some strategies. Okay, so let's see what some of the strategies are. Okay, so why are interactive lectures not good enough? Okay, they are good, but they are not enough. So primary reason is students don't pay the utmost attention. Okay, however good you may be, you are the one who is most excited, right, in that class. So students don't pay utmost attention in your class, right, in any class. The second problem is think that they know. Okay, so this happens for a lot of us because the instructor has done a great job of explaining. You feel that yes, I understood the topic, and that leads to a lot of high teaching evaluations, okay, which is a valid thing. But then the students are not able to demonstrate that understanding when it comes to class. So many of us complain that in the class everybody is fine, in the exams they do poorly. You know, that's the reason for that poor performance in exams. Okay, so because they are not able to, they are not confronted with their misconceptions immediately. Okay. The next point is it's difficult to ensure that all students in the class participate. So this is a key problem with interactive lectures. Okay. So you will have a few students driving your entire lecture because they will be the ones who are interacting with you. So all the questions will be coming from them. They will be answering all your questions. So a small subset of the class. It's happening here also. You know, there are a couple of people there who are going off to sleep, and it's okay. I can talk about them because they are my students. So it's happening everywhere. It happens in an interactive lecture. That's always a issue that students with high motivation and achievement levels, they drive the pace of the class, and students with low achievement levels get left behind. And the last one, which is important, which is where the peer learning point comes. Okay, students have a barrier to responding directly to the instructor. Okay, except for the ones who have a lot of evidence of they are being able to perform well, right? So often students are, especially the ones who are shy or the ones who have not performed that well, they often don't ask questions because they assume that everybody will come to know that I don't know this, or even if they know the answer, they often have a high barrier for responding to the instructor. So sometimes we employ tactics to get around that, right? We say, okay, you answer or you answer, and that often backfires because in the next class that student doesn't show up, right? It often happens that way. So those tactics also don't work. So what you want is a gentle tactic which will allow the student to overcome this barrier. So this TPS is one such tactic. Okay, think, pair, share is one such way where the price of exposing one's ignorance or speaking one's mind is quite low. I mean, you are only talking to your peer, you are only talking to, you are not trying to tell it to the entire class or to the instructor. Okay, okay, so that comes to the end of one part of the talk. Okay, and is there any comment anybody wants to make at this point before I move on? Yeah.
The first two slides
Hmm.
where you showed the outcome,
Okay.
all based on exams, is it? Exam.
Those are based on performance, yes, performance on exams, yes, learning outcomes there, learning results, yeah. So there is a post-test and there is a pre-test, so let me quickly go back to that.
How did you monitor engagement also?
That is in our study, so far we have not talked about that. So this is based on an exam, okay, so that's the performance, and the next one also, so this is a normalized gain, so there is a test that is given which is called the force concept inventory, and then that the gain is measured. So there is a test which is given before the topic on how much you know, and then the topic treatment is done, and then there is a similar test which is given afterwards, and that the gain, how much additional learning has happened, that is measured. Okay.
Is there a way to design these tests? Do you have a methodology for, how do you know that the way the test is given?
Okay, so that's an entire topic in itself. Okay, so there is a way to design these tests. It's not very straightforward. I think Sana is better suited to answer that, because most of the such tests, they are called concept inventories, and they started in physics. Okay, so there is just about one coming out for CS 101, but there are no others in CS. Yeah.
That was one student's PhD thesis. So most concept inventories come out, the creation takes a year or so, refining and testing another year and a half. And there's a whole process by which it's done. Empirical data is taken, it's validated against it and so on. For both statistical analysis and qualitative analysis. This one was, most of these are some students' PhD thesis. If it has to get to that standardization level.
Okay, so I'm going to go a little fast on this. Basically, most of us are familiar with the CS 101 context. Okay, you want students to be able to read code, to trace code, debug code, and to be able to write code. Okay, so you want them to be able to demonstrate conceptual understanding, and since multiple valid solutions may exist, they should be able to analyze the pros and cons of various solutions. So these are the basic instructional goals of CS 101. So this experiment that I am going to describe, we carried out in spring of 2013. So it was Aditi and Ritajit, the two students who did all the observations in the classroom, and many of the others also helped, but mainly they did of the work for doing the observations and the study. Okay. So pedagogical goals was to incorporate active learning technique, encourage students to come up with their own ideas, and get students to work with each other. These were the pedagogical goals, and not surprisingly we chose TPS as our technique, and the research goal was to quantify how much engagement happens, how much learning happens in the class. So how we implemented TPS, the standard thing, there was a think phase where the instructor, in this case the instructor was me, so posed a question like showing some code and asking the students to predict the output of that code, and students worked on it individually. Then in the pair phase, task related to the think phase, such as check your neighbor's solution, see if you have the same solution, or see if that person has solved it in a different way, and so on. Okay. And in the share phase, we talked about a bunch of different techniques that could be used to solve that particular problem. Okay, let me give you a few examples here. So this is a cluttered slide, but just to give you an idea of what all happens. Okay. So one such question was, consider an unsorted array of m elements, and what the students had to do was to write the pseudocode individually for sorting the array. Okay, so this is an important point to keep in mind while setting up a think phase. Okay. So the first activity that is done should be accessible to almost the entire class. Okay. So even by common sense, people can write some pseudocode to sort the array. They don't need to know the order of complexity of quicksort or anything in order to be able to attempt that first step of their of the problem. Okay. So that was the think phase, where students write down the answer to the question, what the instructor does has to encourage students to write. This is something which we find repeatedly, that unless students are encouraged to write, they will just sit and stare, which happened here also. When I first put it up, people were just looking at it. So, and what happened in CS 101 was, after I did this some 3-4 times, the moment I would say TPS, all notebooks would come out and people would start writing. So that was really heartening to see. Okay, so they got it that, okay, think phase means we should write, we can't just look at it. Okay. The pair phase, the example was to discuss.
What did you do to encourage the students to write?
You have to keep exhorting, you have to keep saying, chalo chalo likho, notebook nikalo. Yeah, nothing else. I didn't do anything else. And you have to keep saying that, unless you write you won't realize whether you actually understand it or not. It doesn't take much. So once let's say half the class starts writing, the other half also gets involved. So within some two or three such sessions, you have the entire class writing. Okay. So in the second part, in the pair phase, what they do is they identify parts of the answer that they have missed out. Okay. So some guy will typically forget to take care of boundary conditions or something like that in the pseudocode. Okay. So, and the other fellow would have done that. So when they are talking to each other, so they find out, okay, what they have missed out, they discuss which answer is better, they do the pros and cons. Okay. And at this point, what the instructor does is you have to walk around the class, get a feel for the solution. This is pretty much like what I did just some time ago. Now you need to have an idea of where are the people going, so that later in the share phase you can orient the discussion appropriately. And in the share phase, basically the students participate in the discussion. So they share their own solution, pretty much like what happened here. Somebody says a solution and then somebody else criticizes that, critiques that solution, saying that, okay, this will work only in this case, it won't work in that case, and so on and so forth. So then the instructor will discuss what are the essential parts and does the pros and cons. Okay. So this TPS activity led to a discussion of various sorting algorithms. Okay, it's not, strictly speaking, it's not part of CS 101. Okay, it's a little outside, little beyond, but nevertheless this entire exercise was done in about half an hour, and at a conceptual level students were able to get the idea that, okay, what are the different ways of sorting. Okay. So insertion sort, exchange sort, this, that and all. So all I had to do at the end was, once some of these ideas had appeared on the board, all I had to do was say, okay, look, this is called insertion sort and you will meet it later when you do algorithms and so on. Okay. So the point is that this technique, because they were able to, because I was working with their answers, okay, it was able to go a little farther than my simply telling them what I wanted to tell them. Okay.
So you would begin each class with a share activity?
Okay, so typically these were 1.5 hour classes, and 2 think pair share activities in a class is all that they can take. See, because it's a little, you have to use your brain. It's not like they can sit there and simply take notes. So after 2 such activities they get tired. Okay. You don't get tired because you are not speaking so much. Right, you are kind of standing, walking around, doing other things. But they get tired, and after, then you feel that that's good enough. So each activity takes about 15 to 20 minutes totally. In a, yeah, for a topic of this type. Yeah, yeah.
Actually, but you still have to force some students to talk.
Okay, so this is they are talking to the neighbor.
No, but in terms of sharing the solution with the class, actually that's what we did in point 1.
Yeah, so sharing the solution here.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the sharing of the solution, okay, so what I would do here was, since it was a programming class, so what I had code. Okay, so I had a sorting algorithm, and I would say, okay, here's the code, here's how the code runs, show a demo of how the code runs, and then show the source code and say, okay, now tell me what is it different that you have done from this. Okay, so the moment you show some instructor based code and you ask them to say what is different about yours, they all want to argue with you. Okay, they all want to say that no, I did it this way, that's also correct. It's like, for them it's like getting marks. Yeah. So the other thing that you can do to share their own solution is, see, you don't need, there are not that many solutions. So totally the solution, even though the class is like 150, it's in a large auditorium, you don't get more than 4 or 5 categories of solutions. So there are always a few students who are willing to tell one solution to begin with. Okay? And then later when you ask the question, okay, does anybody have an answer which is different from this? The guy who's got a different answer gets some motivation to speak up. Yeah.
You don't go around making sure that everybody gets to participate in the competition.
Everybody gets to participate with each other. So that participation definitely happens. Does everybody?
How do you know that? I'm not sure, because it could be that within a pair, one person dominates the discussion, other one just listens.
Okay.
And then he or she is asked to come up with a solution, share his or her solution. Give the other answer.
Sure.
Other person's answer.
Sure. So first of all, I don't ask an individual to give the answer. I kind of leave it open. So it's possible that that person keeps quiet also, and only the other person has answered, the person who came up with the ideas. But the only thing I can say is maybe Aditi can say how much of engagement you observed. So when we come to the, so we had an observation protocol, which using which what we found. So it's not something that we can ensure. It's what we found, that such a thing didn't happen. So people did get engaged. So the guy who's not participating will ask a question to the other chap will respond. So some amount of engagement does happen. Yeah.
I see that, there is a predictability. Once you know that the classes are going to be run like this,
Okay.
and that becomes boring for them. They'll predict that this is going to happen, and maybe some kids will read ahead and come there and have the solutions, and maybe some kids won't do anything at all and come.
Okay. So the question is there going to be boredom because they have read ahead and come prepared? Actually, no, because.
Pattern, no? You're now sorting. Next, maybe it's linked list, or maybe something else.
Okay, so not necessarily. So the next one actually is a different type of question. But to answer the question, we are not really reading ahead is really not going to help much, and they are not there to show off in any manner that okay, I know the answer, because that often sometimes can happen in an interactive lecture, because some students want to show that okay, they have learnt it, they know it, and respond to the instructor. Here the stakes are very low. They are not responding to me at all. They are kind of talking to each other. So at least I did not find that boredom setting in.
One point to Rashmiti's comment that in the pairs what happens. The fact that there is a think share where each individual has to commit to write down something on their own, that actually helps towards the pair discussion. So the moment, and this has been seen in other active learning techniques also, that once an individual writes down things and writes down their answer, they feel more either encouraged or more obliged to defend their point of view. So the think pair is necessary here before going on to pair.
Yeah.
So in the pair activity, do you also encourage rotating the pair?
Yeah, the formal technique does that, but it's hard to implement in a large class. So yes, it does sometimes happen that two friends, they come and they always sit together and they always form the pair. I let it go. But
When you make them discuss, do you collect the answers at the end of the class?
not this time. I think maybe once we did that, but no, when we use tablets we can collect it automatically. Right now we didn't do it in the last offering. Yeah, but that's a very useful indicator of how they are thinking. When you look at what they have written down, that's a very useful indicator, but we didn't do that. Okay, so I'm going to skip these two examples. So this example shows that one of the pair works on one aspect of the code, the other works on another aspect of the code, and together the code has to work. So that's an example of how you can use think, pair, share for detailing. And a third example is how you can use it for design problems. Okay, where in the think phase they do some small things. So typically these design problems are again daunting for students to attempt straight away, right? So when you say okay, design a big system, and they don't know how to go about it. So especially when you are talking about first year students. So many of them just freeze. If you give them that problem as a problem, they'll just freeze. They'll say, okay, what do? I don't know what to do about this. How to contact database. So on the other hand, when you break it up, when you say, okay, think, now only think about what data structures will you use. That becomes tractable. So you've taken a big problem, made it tractable for them in the think phase. And then in the pair phase, now once they have got started, once they are doing something, you get two of them to talk to each other, and together you find that they are able to write some pseudocode for the functions, so which actually is a big achievement, because it's a large design problem which otherwise you would have given as an assignment, and you would have let them work in the lab for a couple of for a week or so, which they are at least able to structure the solution in a 20 to 30 minutes activity. Okay. So did it work? So we measured engagement and learning. Okay, we observed a total of 13 TPS activities across the semester. Okay, 8 of those activities, data from 8 activities, we validated our observation protocol. Okay, so that's we were testing that is it valid, are our inferences going to be valid, and so on. And then we reported the findings and inferences from the remaining 5 activities. Okay. So what we found is 83% of the students on an average were mostly or fully engaged, and the predominant behaviors that were displayed were what were expected. So they should be writing the solution in the think phase, they should be discussing with the neighbor in the pair phase, and following the class discussion in the share phase. That's what we saw happening in the class. And student self-perception matches our engagement. So this was published as a paper in a top tier CS Education Research Conference. Yeah.
Two questions actually. I thought you said 2 think pair share activities per class. So you had 13 across.
Yeah, I mean I didn't have one in every class. Yeah. So there were other techniques also that could be used, like that peer instruction is another technique which is not as, peer instruction can take about 5 minutes. Think pair share often takes 20 minutes. So yeah, I didn't have structured think pair share activities in every class. I had some activities in every class, but not all of them were think pair share.
And did you have routine kind of run over the slides also, or it was always just some interaction, some speaking, some discussion? Is that how you taught? I mean, or you?
I think so. I think so. I mean, I would not. Yeah, I think so. I think most of the classes were like that, right? Most of the classes were like that, right? Yeah.
And what roles did the tutorials play? So did you have tutorials at all?
No. So this think pair share activity itself was the tutorial, in-class tutorial.
There were no separate tutorials.
There were no separate tutorials, and and the lab had its own programming skill development aspect. So the conceptual development was happening in the class. Okay. All right. So what many of our students, actually Aditi and Ritajit, were the main ones who were coordinating this, but pretty much everybody came to the class to do some observations, and these are the things that they had to observe. So they would take a group of students and they would look at what is the student doing and write down these codes saying, okay, these are what the students are doing, and then later on track what each student was doing in every phase. In the think phase, the student is writing in a notebook. So the same student, when he goes to the pair phase, he is discussing or not. So these things were observed. Okay. What is 1, 2, 3 those columns?
3 observations. Per phase we had 3 observations. So the students were sampled 3 times per place. 3 times.
One phase is how long?
One phase roughly, depends on the phase, but for example the think phase was 2 minutes long.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3 is TPS.
No.
3 data points within the think
phase.
phase. Because there is a group of students
You look at them 3 times in one.
3 times in one phase.
So how many students would one observer?
We covered about 10 students per observer. So it was, the protocol had about 5 seconds. You look at the student for 5 seconds, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, blah, blah. At instant 5, you note down what they're doing. That is the protocol. This is a standardized observation protocol. So you observe for 5 seconds, then you note down.
Could this have been done by just recording on a video and doing it offline?
Yes. Only thing is you would have to then code the video. You would have to look at the video and spot it. But it was both training for them in research methods as well as quick.
And the other thing is that how do you do it with remote students?
How do you do this in remote students? Okay, so you would probably need to use the video, or you need a remote center coordinator who is trained to do this. So execution of think pair share is different from carrying out observations.
Does this have to happen geographically, coincidentally, or can it happen over, say, a chat room?
Can it happen over a chat room? I really don't know the answer to that. Perhaps it can, but then it would morph into some other technique. So there are many such techniques. Maybe one of the other ones is more suitable for an online forum. Now, so this is mostly a classroom based technique that we are talking about.
Classroom was a stable size seating. There were 150 students on average, sir. 150 students on average. And what we did was we geographically moved around the room in every class so that we were sampling a different set of students. And we could not sample everybody, obviously. So we were moving around the room so that across different activities in the semester we were sampling different students and observing them. And this is the aggregator.
Okay. So yeah, so if you want more information about how the observation was done, what the protocol, how do we say that this protocol is valid, all of that Aditi will handle after the session. Yeah. Okay, so we'll come to that. So what is the strongest indicator of engagement? Okay, so what we find is that in the think phase, 47% of the people were writing in their notebooks. Okay, so we consider that as the strongest indicator of engagement. What they were writing, we expect that they were writing on topic items, right? Because they have to later on discuss, but we cannot guarantee that they were actually doing that. Okay, in fact many of them were using their laptops and many of them would actually try to code while the class was going on. Okay, so we expect, so there is a fair amount of belief that they were on task when they were writing in the think phase. The next one is looking at the activity on the screen. So there again we are trying to think and we are trying to comprehend what is it that you are supposed to do. Okay, and then there are a whole bunch of other activities. Staring away blankly, these are the passive behaviors which are in the very small section. Then in the pair phase, the largest activity is discussing with the neighbor. Okay, so here again it could be discussion. What is the discussion about? It could be about the movie that they saw, but then Aditi and Ritijit will kind of say that no, they were actually talking, they were pointing to the screen and they were trying out some code, so which indicates that they were not discussing a movie, they were on topic. Okay, so that's the claim about discussing, being on topic. Writing in a notebook again is a high percentage, 23% is writing in a notebook. And the share phase, there is again like 60% are following the class discussion and 10% are writing in the notebook. So this again one could say that, how do you know that they were actually following the discussion? They could just be looking, because it's a passive type of an activity. So here again our only argument is that since there was participation and they were talking to their neighbor and confirming what they were, what they had written with what is going on, we believe that they were actually following the class discussion and not simply sitting there in the class.
Just to add to it, I think there were additional observations that they made, that it wasn't just looking at the screen, but if they were looking at the screen and also say pointing in their book or also looking at the neighbor versus simply looking like that at the screen. So their granularity was quite fine.
Yeah.
And that's why the 60% of the following class discussion is a separate code than simply looking at it.
So all these things that you put down, right? You must be having sets which are most important out of these.
Right.
The star in
Right,
the
right.
slide. It's not very visible. Next.
Yeah,
It
okay.
has double stars and single stars. So double stars are important.
Yeah, so the top ones, basically the large discussing activity with neighbor is one here, which is showing 6%.
So
Okay.
to measure that you got correlation.
Sorry?
You can measure these things, it's important.
Yeah. Okay. So this comes to the data about those 5 problems that we were reporting. All that we want to observe at this point is that there is a lot of green stuff and very little red stuff. Okay. So the red stuff indicates people who are not engaged, and the green stuff is people who are engaged at various levels. And all that we are claiming here is that this shows that this engagement due to TPS is consistent across problems. It's not just once we observed and we saw that, but there were 13 instances of observations, 8 were used to verify the refine the protocol, and in 5 instances we find that this is true. So it goes towards generalizability of the observations, that the result is indeed true. Okay. And then we also try to track individual students, saying that okay, suppose the student started out fully engaged in the think phase, what happens to that student later on? And did the student continue to stay engaged, or did the student become less engaged, or and then in the share phase, where was that student? So this again, it's I'm not going to go into the details of that, but what we found was those who were high continue to stay high in the those who were high in the beginning continue to stay high, and those who were low eventually move upwards as the phases progress. Okay, so that's basically what we found. Okay. So how did we triangulate? I mean, these are all our observations, our beliefs, and so on. Okay, so we asked students 2 questions. How frequently did you write the solution to the problem? How frequently did you discuss your solution with your partner? Okay, so these 2 questions to see whether they were actually doing the task that we thought they were doing. So once again, students said that, so the often and always is high. Now whether they were speaking the truth or whether they were just making us happy, again is something that we cannot answer for. But we expect that because both the triangulations are happening, our independent observations and their statements, so there is reason to believe that it is actually so. Okay. Coming to learning, so now that was about engagement. Are the students engaged in the classroom? Coming to learning, yeah.
Did you also collect data during an interactive lecture where such activity was not done?
Did we observe the control group?
No, not the control group. Your lectures were all you were all TPS.
No, but we had one control group, one lecture we had, which was interactive lecture.
It was another instructor's lecture which we observed.
Okay.
But there are so many other factors which were influencing directly.
Okay. No, but the control group experiment, the class in which we did the experiment control wala threads ka, that we didn't do observations in that class. Okay. 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 So coming to the learning, so it's fine, it keeps students engaged and all that. Does learning actually increase? So that's the next question that we want to investigate. So I had a class where I was to teach one batch in the morning and another batch in the afternoon. Okay. So naturally they became 2 groups. One was the experimental group, the other was the control group. It so happened that in one class I had done the interactive lecture, and by the time it was time for the next class, I thought of a TPS for it. Okay. So we created a TPS. So otherwise, it's in the interest of fairness, we don't want to give different treatments to the same batch, especially if you are going to be giving grades to all of them together at the end of the course. Okay. So this is one study. The topic was CPU execution sequence of multiple threads. Now this class has a diversity of people who know programming and people who don't know programming. Okay. So this topic was kind of new to both of them. So their prior knowledge does not play a role. No? How does interleaving of multiple threads being scheduled happen? Okay. The TPS treatment was to, you give the program for 2 or 3 threads, and you ask them to write one possible execution sequence. In the pair phase, they check their neighbor solution and come up with another possible interleaved sequence, and in the share phase, they identify differences from the one that the instructor came up with. Okay. In the post test, there was a problem on thread interleaving, which was in the class following the above activity. So that for both the groups, it was the knowledge was pretty recent. Okay. And this was, I think, a 4 marks question. And what we found was that the experimental group did significantly better, significantly in 2 aspects. One is statistically significant, and the other is even in terms of the effect size. So there was a moderate to a large effect size in terms of the difference between the performance of the 2 groups. The other thing that we did was we once again said, okay, this may be our measurement, let's also ask the students. So we asked the students, did it help you? Okay. So thinking about it helped me learn, it helped me learn the concept. So these were all, the previous 2 questions that we had asked them was about were they engaged, did they do the activity? Here we were asking them questions about did it help them learn CS 101 concepts. Okay. So once again you find that the large percentage is in this agree, some is in the neutral, okay, and very little is in the disagree aspect. So again there is reason to believe that carrying out TPS in your class will not only improve the engagement of the students in the class, it will also improve the learning. Okay. So we also confirmed it using focus group interviews. So focus group interviews are is a mechanism whereby you ask a broad question to a group of students, record what they say, and based on that, in this case we are quoting them directly, so that these are responses which are not triggered by any question that I am asking. These are grounded responses. So if you look at, I will just give you a minute to read what they said. So a couple of points to observe. So one is the students are saying that no, we realize that there are some places where we get stuck. Okay, so where even though the lecture was interesting and all that, we found out where we were not able to actually demonstrate our learning. Okay, and then talking to the peer helps them to overcome that problem. So this happens for many students. Okay, even a simple clarification sometimes allows the student to move forward as compared to waiting for the end of the class to go and ask the instructor. Okay, so that's a big thing. And the other big thing is that you typically come up with 4 or 5 different solutions, and in half an hour of TPS we are able to learn these 4 or 5 methods to solve a problem instead of spending time on each of them separately. Okay, so here are some snippets from the course evaluation forms. They explicitly wrote this in the course evaluation. One is help to build confidence, it stimulated thinking, it improved understanding. So these are unsolicited comments which appeared in the course evaluation form. So I was actually surprised that they could even relate to the technique so much that they chose to comment about it. Of course there were the adverse ones also. So there were some who said that sometimes it was more than needed, perhaps I went overboard, okay, in some of the classes. So sometimes it becomes too much for them to keep on doing this pair activity and keep on being engaged with the content. Some of them perceive that the pace is slow. So this is again a fairly common problem that one needs to address, because there is a lot of discussion happening and the instructor is not speaking, students feel that they are not learning. Okay, so they feel that the pace is slow. So that's again, this has to be countered by just showing them that look, you did as well in the exam as the other group. And yeah, there were always a few who couldn't connect. I don't know what that meant. Anyway, so that was the idea.
So how did they perform in the exam?
I don't have a comparison data with another CS101 group yet. So I was to do measurements in, see, basically the same question has to be given in both the batches. So it's a little tricky, right? I mean, the same batch, they are all staying in the same hostel. How do you give the same question to a batch which took it in fall and the same question to somebody who took it in spring? So that's the problem. So I don't have data about how they perform in comparison to another type of. So that's only one, on one question we have data, right? This is the data. On one question, the afternoon session or whatever the experimental group did better.
So there's only one question, that means 1 day.
One session, that's all. There is no data on, okay, CS101 total grades in this semester versus CS101 total grades in some other.
For every session, like if you were taking classes 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, you didn't have it all the way through the semester?
No. So I did TPS for both the classes,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's not fair if I only do it for one class and don't do it for the other class.
Control and experiment.
Yeah, but it's fair for me as a researcher. It's not fair for the student.
That is fair if you had a separate evaluation, I mean you graded them in their own class.
But it's the same content, right? I mean, they're both supposed to take the same exam, same mid-sem.
No, you give the same exam, but you just make this section A, this is section B. Section A gets a grading normalized curve according to their performance. Section B gets their,
It's a little tricky. Okay, for one in CS101 you don't see a bell curve. Okay, it's linear because you have 80 marks spread in which 450 students have to be fitted. Okay, so you often have like 4 students per mark. So it's a little, I didn't want to get into that, I was sure that it would lead to a lot of complaints from one group or the other group. So I just didn't do that. Okay, and that can be done only in controlled settings. Yeah.
In terms of performance of your class when you applied this methodology versus when you did not, in terms of the overall performance of the total class, was there any difference in this semester versus
Yeah, so that's the question to which I don't have the answer, because we didn't give the same exams. So in the last semester another instructor taught who had his own set of topics that were important, who had his own set of questions that he thought were important. So we had very few questions that were matched.
Even let's say if these are different, is there anything known about the distribution of a large class?
Distribution over 10%.
Grade distribution we can look at. So I don't have the data yet, but yeah, that's part of
Is
what.
that considered something in the indicator of how this might work? I mean, does it change the distribution? This kind of strategy, does it change the distribution?
Yes, in terms of if we go back to that graph where we saw about the interactive lecture versus the active engagement, the gain is there. But in particular in CS 101 I don't have the data. Yeah.
How much variation across the years is there in the content?
How much variation is there across the years? There is a fair amount. So my course, for example, I use Scratch, which no other instructor had used till then. I used Scratch for 2 weeks. So that's the instructor's prerogative, right? Scratch is a programming language, visual programming language. So I think there is a there is a lot of commonality. So you can't get away from talking about arrays or linked lists or structures or classes or inheritance. So that everybody will talk about. But there will be a few topics, like for example, somebody will say, okay, let me focus on mathematical applications. Somebody will say, let me focus on geometric applications. Okay. So I focused on design of software systems. Okay.
On learning, so since a lot of you are asking questions on control, right? Many of these active learning techniques, what they've shown is that students improve conceptual reasoning, deeper thinking, better expert-like behavior, in the sense they're able to make more assumptions and so on. But ultimately it depends on the exam. So if you're giving traditional problems, finally, you may not see differences at all, because the method is not geared to improve students' ability to solve a traditional back of the chapter problems. So if you want, so many of the studies what they report is equal on final exams, because final exams have to cater to the standard kind of problems. But in addition to it, improved conceptual reasoning, for example, the FCI test and so on. So this is a very typical type of result you see, and that's good enough because the improved conceptual reasoning is not seen when students simply sit in this.
Yeah.
Of the three components, T, P and S, which is the most important?
Of the three components, which is the most important? So there is no clear answer to it. If I had to let go of one, I would let go of the S. So the T is important, the P is important, the S is somewhat compromisable. But really speaking, none of them. The T is important because each student is thinking on his own and committing to some answer. The P is important because they have to discuss with each other and they come to know the lacuna in their thinking. So in some sense you can stretch the P to also take care of the S aspect.
My guess is that there are some concepts which don't lend themselves that easily to S or to P.
Possibly. So yeah, so it's not like it's not a catch-all. I mean, you'll have to decide the topic based on so for example, a topic where there are multiple solutions, topics where there are open-ended discussions that are possible, debates, where controversy can be generated, those topics are good. Topics where, let's say, you have to, even a topic where you have to prove property of an algorithm, even that, to some extent, you have to be a little agile to frame it as a TPS. But I would agree that it will not fit all topics. Okay, so I am at the end of my 1 hour. These are the summary of findings which I have already talked about. Okay, so what I have now are some activity sheet for you to try out TPS, framing a TPS question. Okay, so I'll distribute this and you can actually, yeah. So while people are attempting this, so it's pretty much self-explanatory. Yeah, can you just distribute some?
So why it is pair, why it is not 3, 4 or 5 in a group?
Okay, so the question is, why is it pair? Why is it not 3, 4 or 5? So pair is actually the easiest to handle. Okay, 4 is typically the upper bound because beyond that you will always have people who are not participating in a group. There is another strategy which is called team pair solo, where you start off with a larger group. You start off with a group of 4 or 5 and then you do a pair and then you do an individual. Okay. So, but think pair share goes in this order. Okay, so coming to what we have to do. So this is a voluntary exercise, so if you feel that okay you don't want to do this now and all, it's perfectly okay with me, it's not an exam or anything. So this is an activity, so this is to help you create a think pair share activity for your class. Okay. So either the one that you taught or the one that you are going to teach or some other class that you can think about teaching. Okay. So in the first part there are guidelines on what to do for the various steps of the activity. Maybe I'll do.
Does this also apply to small classes?
It applies mostly to small classes. It has evolved from, so I think we are one of the few who have extended it to large classes. So in a small class it's fairly easy to do because you can give every pair a chance to speak. Okay, so what I would suggest is take a shot at writing the think question for your class, okay, for your course. So it will help you to determine how much buy-in you have into the technique. So we are planning to create a question bank. So I have questions, examples from CS 101 on the next page on the back side. So what I am hoping is as more people participate, we will create a question bank of questions for various disciplines. So write a TPS for Blender. Okay. Write some activity for teaching something. Yeah, I think they are already in. Yeah, so what you could do is you could pair up with another person from your discipline, your domain, and work it out together. So I will not hold you for more than 10 minutes. So the idea is to write some questions for us to discuss what are the type of questions that have come up and then we close. So you can do all the phases, what you are going to write in the, what you are going to ask them to do in the think phase and in the pair phase. And is it making sense? You know, are the instructions making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, because I want to put it up. So we are creating this series of instructor resources as part of the IDP. So we'll just want to make it public.
Right.
So only I have seen it so far. I got it done in the morning. Sure. So if most of you have a think question and a pair question, we can put them up for everybody to see. It will be, I will generate a database in that sense. Okay, so I am just going to type what you say.
Yeah, so write,
Yeah, please.
write down an example of a system
Write down an example of a system
that you encounter in everyday life and identify the input, output and system description.
identify input, output and system description. Okay, it's a good think question, yeah. Pair?
Here is examine one another's examples and review the correctness of the input, output, system description given, and then identify further questions on system properties that you would like to ask.
Okay, share. Share would be, yeah, it's the same. You would collect
Collect all the examples.
system descriptions, yeah.
look for common system properties.
Okay, so does anybody want to comment or say their own? Same. This is very generic, but I think it's a very good question because it depends upon which course you are targeting it for. Which is what you want in the think phase. You do want the think phase attemptable by everybody. So I expect that you would lead from this into a probably even a control system type of discussion. You could say, okay, what inputs, what outputs.
Systems course. I'm kind of thinking of a signals and systems course.
Okay. So yeah, maybe I should put down the course also. Right. So this is signals and systems. Yeah, and it's so you could use it. So he's designed an activity that you can use in your class. That's the whole point of sharing this. Yeah. Right. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. Can you mention the course for which you are targeting it?
Data structures.
Data structures.
Question is
Yeah.
T.
Huh.
Design a data structure to store elements such that it takes order one time to find the smallest element.
Takes order one time to find the smallest. Yeah.
Element. And what is the insertion time?
Two questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Identify the insertion time.
Okay. Okay. Pair phase.
Pair. So pair is slightly elaborate.
Okay.
So ensure that your neighbor's data structure
Yeah. Check.
it takes order one time.
Let me say check.
Yeah. Order one insertion time.
Yeah. Order one insertion time.
Yeah.
Order one
Sorry,
find.
Yeah. Order one.
Order one time. Yeah. Okay.
Could he have done better on the insertion?
Huh. Okay. Share.
So share just
What would you do?
I mean, what I expect.
Huh.
I would show some, for example, a link, sorted link to this. I would introduce the priority queue.
Yeah. Okay. Then discuss student solutions.
Yeah. So I would show these and then ask students how this.
And differences with own, right? Okay. So one more point here is the first question that we came up up here is for an introductory class, right? When you're starting the course, that's where you want to say. Whereas this one assumes a fair amount of background. Okay, this is also valid, except that you need to ensure that if most of your class is already at this point where they understand what you order one time. So if your class, if there are many students in your class who don't understand what is order one time, then they are going to get stuck at that phase itself. So this is at a later stage in your course. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. Data visualization. Yeah.
Question is,
So let me also write at what level. Okay. So I'm going to say introductory here, and this is at a later stage. Okay. Data visualization, introductory. Okay.
I think question is, given a data set, think about an appropriate representation. I mean, come up with an appropriate representation.
Okay.
Rare case question is, given an objective query on that data set, check with your partner which of your representation points to the required answer faster.
Okay. So given a data set, what you mean is you will give the data set to everybody, right? They are not to assume a data set. Okay, okay. So that's outside the think phase then. Okay, so you are going to give them a data set, and in the think phase you are saying come up with a representation technique. The pair phase you are going to give a query,
Common query.
or in the beginning itself, data set and query.
No, the query will be given
Later.
before the
Okay. Given a query on your data set, check which representation points to the required answer faster. What do you mean by faster here?
Then we'll say the number of steps required to
Okay.
point to that answer.
Okay. Okay. Fine. So you would have some representations in your mind which you would kind of map the student solutions to, right? Yeah. And some metric to measure. Okay.
I don't know how this class, this particular scenario, but I want to find out how much garbage
Okay.
an IIT resident produces a day.
Okay. So that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Okay. Problem is how much garbage does an IIT resident produce?
So how do I go about finding out what we need?
Okay. So do you want an answer from me, or are you going to say what you are?
I'm still thinking. So
Okay.
but I could,
Well, I can do something on the fly, make a guess. So I don't know whether it will work or not. So let's do it together.
How much of garbage do you produce?
Right. So we start with how much garbage do you produce in a day? I think that's tractable for everyone, right? And that's not scary question to answer. Yeah. Pair. So I think the key here is for this question, what are we going to give as the pair phase task?
No, look at, compare one another.
Okay, compare one another's answers, but that's not, so we want the pair phase to lead towards this total answer, no? So we want to do some estimation now. It's not enough to simply do the pair, compare, okay, estimate,
And also evaluate your estimate.
Identify missing.
then compare one another's
garbage also.
and discuss the differences between different cohorts of
Yeah.
Estimate a worst case and a maximum and minimum bound from this.
Okay. For an individual, right?
Yes. Yes.
I think, yeah. So then there will be two points in the pair phase. The third one would be saying, okay, estimate how many people are there and do the extrapolation. Yeah, I'm going to just.
Or you do the average.
Yeah, so extrapolate. No, this is okay. Yeah. Extrapolate to population and average.
some dwellers were by IIT residents.
Yeah. Share phase. What will we do in the share phase? I think we would.
Extrapolate is more a share.
Extrapolate is.
And this
Yeah.
is different populations or cohorts, if you like, slum dwellers.
Yeah. So share phase could be. So share phase is differences between different populations. Okay, I think also extrapolate. Yeah. Extrapolate will fit here because you already estimated a maximum bound for an individual there.
But without a proper,
Without a, sorry?
without a proper knowledge about the population,
Huh.
estimating would be difficult.
No, so that's why it's in the share phase. So what we are saying is that, okay, people who are living in Ananta, they produce this much garbage. So one individual in Ananta is going to do this, another individual there. So what we expect is in the pair phase, you would have got answers for each of those communities. Somebody from each community will say, okay, in my community this is the number. And then you put it down on the board and you say, okay, what are the characteristics of your community? And then some other community. So I think in that way the entire population will also emerge.
But you were talking about slum area, like the people how can you estimate?
Yeah, I mean,
Trying to answer that question.
so how much garbage does an IIT resident produce? That's the question, right?
Consider the
So I think that's, yeah, so it's out of scope. Huh?
Don't we have to define what garbage is?
So that's probably going to happen here, right? How much do we produce in a day? So at that, yeah. So in the think phase itself.
There was a talk how all garbage can be reused to create things.
Okay.
We made a car out of plastic cans. Zero garbage. Physical and
I think if you say list the types of garbage you produce, that will cover it, because then when they go into the pair phase, looking at, okay, this is what I consider garbage, this is what you consider garbage, there can be a lot of reconciliation happening there. Okay, so I mean that's what we can do in 5 minutes. Anybody else? Any other points? Yeah.
See, I have this. I wrote it down because I'm not teaching anything.
Okay.
Not any subject, but we are running this competition called Yantra Robotics Competition.
Okay.
So I see this as an activity to get a review process from the teams that are participating
Okay.
across the country. So this is completely online activity where they are taken through a competition in a project learning mode.
Okay.
Project-based learning.
So review of the competition is what you want to do.
See, I thought
Okay.
one way would be to, for each of the tasks that we are assigning, we can do this kind of thing, activity. And at the end of the whole competition, we can do it more like a review. So my first thing, the T was, what do you think of the methodology that we use in EYRTC, which is the Yantra Robotics Competition?
Hey. So we'll take comments after she finishes. Okay, pair.
So then pair is which step in the methodology was most effective or most challenging? So they are given different tasks. So each of the person first writes down his or her opinion, and then they discuss with their one of the team members. So they are paired
Okay.
people.
Okay.
And then finally have a hangout session, or a Skype session with all these people, and we find out, we have let them discuss and figure out what their feedback
Okay.
is on
Okay, by methodology, actually we mean the process.
So see, what do you think about, okay, let me come back to, I think this is a good time for me to just come back to this point of what are the guidelines. Okay. So the first guideline is there should be a clear deliverable for each phase. Okay. So when you ask a question like what do you think of, you need to specify what do you expect from them, what is their deliverable, what are they supposed to deliver. Okay. So you should refine that question a little more to say, to give a clear direction to what you expect them to say there. Okay. So the think of needs to be modified.
That lends itself actually well to an objective test also.
What is that?
You have thought out the various possibilities, it lends itself to an objective kind of test.
Okay. 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 So the next question is which step in the methodology was most effective or challenging? So here again, see, I would have one. So let's say you ask this as the think question. Okay. In the pair phase, you would have one answer, I would have another answer. So another thing that you want to do here is to ensure that there is something for two people to talk about here, and once again some deliverable at the end of the thing. So this is also one point that we want to keep in mind. So the think phase has to flow naturally for both of them to be able to do, right? So it's not entirely clear to me what will happen here. No? So let's try to rephrase these questions. So think phase. So what is your opinion of the efficiency? What do you want to say? I don't know your methodology, so I really can't comment.
I didn't want to elaborate.
What is your?
Then I have to explain to everyone what
Yeah.
I mean. So but I will come back to you on this.
Yeah.
I can think of it. I know exactly.
So let's say step 3. Okay, some step. If you ask them a specific question, and then here in a pair phase you will again need to change that. Okay, so yeah, compare your answer. Yeah. See, because that connection has to come between the two phases. And what is the third one? Yeah, so the third one is that you want to ensure that there is sufficient time for each of this, and if we give too little time, it leads to frustration, too much time, it leads to boredom. Okay, so is there anybody else who wants to answer? Yeah, go ahead.
Course is digital image processing.
1 second. Yeah,
Digital image processing.
right.
Advanced level class.
Okay.
The question is, you have an image file of 17 kilobytes.
17 kilobytes.
How can you make the memory occupied as 10 kilobytes?
Okay. That's the think phase question. Pair phase?
Where phase, have you reduced the size itself?
No, pair phase. What are they doing in the pair phase? So, two people have to work on it. What will they do? So, I have to do something with your answer. Let's say you and I are the pair. So, I have come up with one answer. So, I have come up with one answer of my own. You have come up with one answer of yours. So, what are we doing in the pair phase now?
They have come out with the answer and then they will discuss whether they have reduced the size itself.
Okay. Check. Okay.
Or they have lost any information.
Ha.
Or it is then retaining the entire information.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay.
Share phase, answers are collected and different compression techniques are highlighted.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good one actually. All right. So since yeah, you want to go? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
For a given problem statement,
Okay. Where is it outside the think? Huh? Okay.
for a given problem statement, identify entities and relationships.
Okay.
Pair phase compare the solution, each other's solution,
Yeah.
and then discuss redundant entities or missing entities. Discuss about the aggregation and inheritance, whether it can be applicable or not.
Okay. Share phase.
Share.
Share phase was what? Sorry.
Phase, think about the optimal solution.
Okay. Think about won't work.
Share and come out with the optimal solution.
Okay. Right, that also works. All right, so I think most people are tired, so I'll stop here. If anybody else wants to also talk, we'll talk about it later because we're interrupting. Okay, so these are the summary, and that's my last slide. These slides, the resource sheet and this video will be up on the ET website. So this is a talk series, as Professor Gadre mentioned. This is the first talk in the series, and what we expect is that the first Thursday of every month we'll have a talk like this. Next talk is peer instruction by Sahana Murthy. Okay, that's it.